Hi, beautiful people. Welcome to episode 4, I think. I'm honestly not sure what episode this is. This is either, I think it's 4. Yeah, or 3. I'm going to say it's 4. So welcome to episode 4 of Worthy, Flirty, and Thriving. So in this episode, I wanted to talk about childhood trauma, pain, and healing. So this is something we cannot escape from. You know, life isn't without pain. It's a part of the experience. Is we all go through some kind of childhood trauma where we develop some kind of insecurity or pattern or behavior that we're having to unlearn and undo within ourselves. And so I just want to kind of share what my process has been for being able to move forward and maintain a really positive mindset on a daily basis. So first I want to address that positivity it's not like I'm not just in that positive mode. I'm feeling good all the time and every day, but I'm definitely not where I used to be. So previously before, I would say from the ages of 13 onto my early 20s, depression and anxiety were just the norm for me on a day-to-day basis, feeling those emotions, thinking those thoughts. The thing is, I didn't even realize how depressed I was until I got out of it. So that's the funny thing. I think it's kind of funny because I had no idea I was that depressed. I was just like, oh, I was depressed. And even when I thought I was healed, I was still depressed. So I didn't even realize that was what depression or how bad it was. Because I've seen people in really dark states of depression before. And I've never had crippling depression to the point where I couldn't leave the house or I didn't partake in, doing a job. So I just didn't realize that I was depressed still. I was one of those depressed people who would still go to work, still try to interact with people. So depression doesn't have one note or one way of being, but I have figured out how to process it and move through it. And I could say with 100% confidence, I'm not depressed. And as far as anxiety goes, I still experience anxiety, but it's not debilitating anymore. It doesn't control me, and it doesn't control the decisions I make in life anymore. There are times where I think I fall back into a little bit of that mindset, but it's not enough to where I feel fearful of engaging with the world. So that's just my overall story about mental health. So let's just go ahead and talk about the things I wanted to bring up today. I have 2 parts I wanted to bring up. I wanted to talk about old pain. And then I also wanted to talk about new/current pain. So your old pain, that's a lot of the childhood trauma patterns that you've developed, right? These are past things that already happened to you some time ago that you're still having to heal from and process. And then the new and current pain is anything that comes up, so any kind of insecurity that comes up on a daily basis that you're having to process for yourself. I still have to sift through that. That's a lot of what comes up for me is new pain. Old pain, I don't really feel it as much because I've learned how to recircuit and rewire myself to embrace new patterns and new behaviors. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to old pain is closure/close the door. Closure/close the door. So, childhood trauma, we all experience some kind of a little bit of family dysfunction, I feel like. That was most definitely my story growing up, is experiencing family dysfunction, seeing it was normalized, experiencing it on a daily basis. Poor communication was a huge part of what created a lot of the disconnect in me mentally. I would speak to myself in very negative ways because of what I learned growing up, what I saw demonstrated, and then what I experienced or what was put towards me as well. So as far as closure goes, it's very important for you to find a way to forgive and let go of any kind of past experience that happened and to forgive the people who created those experiences. During the times when I was going through a lot of that dysfunction and that pain, I was praying so hard and I was trying so hard to heal that I always wanted so badly to be forgiving and loving towards the people who were still causing me pain and anguish. And that's just a normal part of being human. It's you always want to see the best in people because there are 2 sides, right? It's not black and white. These are the same people who actually were the most generous to me as well. And so that's why sometimes relationships can get really confusing because we get in connections where someone is so loving and beautiful towards us, yet at the same time, they also engage in really toxic and hurtful behaviors as well. But closure is very important. There are so many times, there was a period of time where I kept having conversations with my parents of wanting us to move past things. But to be honest, the minute I totally forgave them and let it go, we stopped having those conversations and we stopped reflecting on it. And I wasn't caught up in it. Sometimes people who are still caught in their darkness and they're still having to process, and they personally are still having to do so much inner work with themselves, they will bring it up. But I don't care to bring it up anymore because I've moved past it. So I have had those conversations. If you need to have those conversations with the people who hurt you, you can. But I was lucky enough that these people also wanted to heal. They wanted to heal our relationship. They wanted to work on things. And so it was a very open discussion between the two of us so that both parties understood that we played a part in the experience and that we were both wanting to move on. The other part of that is close the door. I close the door. I don't bring up, sometimes I will bring it up comedically. I'm not going to lie. It's not like we heal and it's just like, whoa, it's totally gone. Sometimes I will bring things up comedically, but for the most part, I've understood the importance of closing the door and not bringing up those situations anymore. If you find yourself bringing up pains and hurts that happened in the past, you haven't gotten the closure and you haven't closed the door. But it is so important. If you really want to move on and have a beautiful future and enjoy your life and feel positive and optimistic and healed, you have to close the door. Otherwise, all of that pain and anguish is going to come out. So, for example, I process a lot of my pain through music and through songs. Sometimes when I sing those songs, it feels like I'm reliving the experience again. I don't really like to go back to those songs at all anymore because they bring me back to that experience. So I try not to relive it. Okay. So moving on that takes me to part number 2, which is don't relive it. Whenever you're engaging in a story, I used to tell my story over and over in my head and relive it over and over again to the point where I was essentially re-traumatizing myself with the experience. So it's so important for you to stop telling yourself the story over and over again. But this is a habit I have embraced when it comes to a lot of things. There are certain things that I have, like my new pain, I'll bring it up. There are certain new insecurities where I do repeat stories in my head and I have to catch it as much as possible. So the best way for you to not relive those experiences is through self-awareness. Self-awareness is absolutely life-changing. Finding a way to pause and catch yourself and to listen to your thoughts. Journaling is a powerful way for you to find a way to stop, pause, and slow down the energy so you don't relive it. When you're telling the story either to other people or if you're journaling about it over and over again, or if you're talking about it to your friend, you're essentially reliving it. You'll know you're really healed if you can tell your story and just essentially laugh at it. If I were to bring up certain stories or certain pains, I would probably cry somewhat because I'm still healing. But for the most part, I got amnesia, which takes me to the next part of this bullet point. Don't relive it and cultivate amnesia, which is essentially like an optimistic mindset. So I don't really think about it. I used to think about the negative things that happened to me in childhood over and over again. Oh, this person did this to me. Oh, this person did this to me. So you often find there are people who relive their past over and over again. They're essentially re-traumatizing themselves. I learned how to cultivate amnesia. I don't care. I'm always thinking about what's excited, what I'm happy about. And, I focus on happy memories that I enjoyed, or I focus on things that I'm enjoying in my current life, or I focus on what I'm excited to build. I have amnesia. I don't think about the past experiences that happened to me. In fact, when I was having a conversation with my sister today and I started thinking about a childhood experience that happened to me, I started to tear up a little bit because I forgot that part of me existed. I forgot that that's what I had went through. But it's so crazy because I don't relate to that person anymore. It's like night and day. The person who went through that versus who I am now is totally different. And so I'm all about embracing who I am now and becoming the person who I am now. But it really gives me perspective to see what I went through and how I've been able to strengthen myself and stand in my resilience thanks to being persistent with building myself towards confidence and joy and love. So the next part I want to talk about when it comes to old pain is use it. If you're going to think about old pain, use it intentionally to reflect on better decision making. The reason why I journal is because I try to process the pain in that moment and use it as intellect or wisdom or knowledge for how to make better decisions moving forward. That's why I think about things in that moment and process it and I journal it, as opposed to reflecting like really hard and thinking, oh, what's a better decision? The thing is, you always know what's better for you. You always know what feels good, essentially. It's just the thing that feels good. So if I do ever think about like past experiences that happen, it's usually for things or topics like this where I'm trying to teach and I'm trying to understand what's the perspective, like where was I before versus where I am today. That's the only time where I really reflect on what happened to me before, but it's not a constant thing for me to revisit old memories, especially painful ones. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about new pain / current pain. So I say new pain / current pain because this is just like whatever you're experiencing like presently on a day-to-day basis. And just, it's a way for you, the new pain, I titled it that because it's a way for you to acknowledge that moving forward, you're still going to go through painful experiences. You're still going to go through moments where things hurt. So what do the people say? That pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Yes, that's absolutely true. Pain is just a part of life. It's part of being human. It's normal. So what I've learned to do for myself, I've learned to cultivate tools, and I talk about this all the time on my channel. Cultivate tools for yourself so that you know how to handle pain, so you know how to handle difficulty, so you know how to process it, so you don't self-sabotage or turn towards very bad action steps to tear apart your life. So often I notice, I would say especially when it comes to women, is they repress so much of their desires to a point where it comes bubbling up to their surface that they will essentially self-sabotage and create like a tornado in their lives. They'll, essentially ruin things all at once, chaotically, because they were repressing their desires. So spiritually, I'm going to bring up this sign. So there's a sign in Vedic astrology. Vedic astrology, it splits all of the 12 astrological signs into 27 nakshatras. There's a nakshatra called Mula, and this nakshatra is ruled by Kali, and it falls in the sign of Sagittarius. So what this sign serves as is gaining wisdom through painful experiences. So gaining wisdom through destruction, finding a way to purify through destruction. So often you might find that you have these sort of destructive patterns and behaviors because you're trying to shake up your life, because at the core, you're trying to purify. And this isn't exactly my favorite way to gain strength, but I have had times in my life where I've absolutely created chaos in my life because of repressed emotions. And so one thing that I absolutely talk about and I try to do on a regular basis is process my emotions. So even if I'm not processing my emotions on a daily basis, which you absolutely should, I process it on a weekly basis at the very least. So this means I sit with myself and I just sit with my body and I sit with my emotions and I see what's going on inside. I see what thoughts are running around my head and I acknowledge them and see, okay, what's going on here? That's essentially what processing emotions is. If you allow yourself to sit with the emotion, sit with the feeling, you'll find that it will dissipate, because all emotions want are attention. All they want is attention. If you give them attention, they will dissolve on their own. And so you're not building up this. If you don't feel your emotions, eventually they're going to repress. So feel the emotion and it will dissipate. So feel it, put your attention on it, put your attention on where you feel it in your body, and it's going to flow out of you. If you don't feel it, it's going to stay repressed in it and it's going to become bubbling up to the surface like you've been put in a pressure cooker. So process your emotions. The last part I want to talk about is life is about taking it day by day. Life is about taking it day by day. There isn't a perfect formula. It's just about taking it day by day. And so what I've learned to do is I don't overwhelm myself with like big decisions in life where I'm thinking, oh, I have to transform my life today. Absolutely not. That's so much pressure. I take it day by day. I just see where I'm at today. I see where I want to be by the end of the day. I set goals for myself and intentions, but I've learned to, and I will bring spirituality in this, I've learned to pray and bring God into the conversation where I say, I set an intention, I have a certain desire, and I trust that God's going to help me fulfill that desire. My only job is to focus on my life day by day and seeing what feels good. So we have gotten so used to repressing our desires so much, especially as women, to the point that we don't even know what feels good anymore. What feels good. So that's why I've created this series, to help women relearn what feels good to you so that it becomes normalized and a part of your day-to-day experience. If you learn what feels good, you're essentially becoming more attuned to your intuition. And you're not going to go into your life wreaking havoc because you've repressed your emotions and you're trying to essentially burst out and find some kind of freedom and free yourself. Freedom is like a day-to-day process. If you're trying to access more of that, that's what people who pursue the path of spirituality and who have ascended to high levels understand, is attaining that level of freedom and becoming one with spirit, becoming one with God and the divine. It's a day-to-day process. Freedom is something that we require every day, acquire knowledge on and experience on a day-to-day basis. So that's what we're working towards. That's why you're never going to get bored. That's why from the day you're born to the day you die, you always have a job, which is to connect with God and to become one with the divine. So I don't know, I just became like really emotional all of a sudden with that. But it's crazy because I didn't really rehearse any of this discussion today. So I'm just kind of hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth and I'm kind of blown away. So I was like, oh, I didn't know that that's where I was taking it. But that's true. It's about feeling good. It's about feeling good. We have normalized not feeling good. We've normalized pain. I'm like, pain is something you're supposed to process, not something you're supposed to embrace. You're allowed to feel good. Pain essentially is what you want to try to neutralize as much as possible, which in processing emotions, that's what you obtain, is when you process your emotions, you obtain a state of neutrality. And that's what I had to learn to get to. That's how I learned to come out of depression and my states of anxiety, is through learning how to process my emotions. And that way I could obtain a state of neutrality. That way I'm not biased or overly emotional when it comes to making important decisions or talking to people. I try to navigate my emotions in a very healthy way. And most definitely, I've allowed them to move through me. I used to be so bottled up with my emotions and I didn't really express them, but I had a lot of emotions, and that's why I started to create a lot of havoc in my life and with those who I really cared about, because I didn't know how to do that. But I had to teach myself, and that's something that I absolutely want you guys to take a moment to acknowledge, is that we're all learning. We're all learning, we're all figuring it out. You're not supposed to just have it all figured out. We're all here to help each other. I learned how to get to the level I'm at, and I want to pass on this knowledge, and I want you to pass what you learn onto someone else, and I want them to pass it on to someone else. Like, let's all pay it forward and help each other to heal. So that's what I want to share in this episode of childhood trauma, healing, and pain. It's just a part of life. Don't be ashamed of it and don't run away from it. Take it day by day, and eventually you're going to get to where you want to be. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Worthy, Flirty, and Thriving. Make sure you like, subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a beautiful day or evening. Bye.